God bless everyone. Continuing these teaching video series on denominations. And I was just doing an intro in the last video. We can continue. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about, growing up in where I came from. And I grew up in the Mennonite church. And but it was in another country. It was in a civil country going through civil war. Interesting thing to understand. Also, a lot of countries when there's civil war, there's persecution of Christianity, there's a lot of more unity amongst the Christian brothers in terms of denominations coming together under one church. And you saw a lot of that. So when there's a lot of persecution, you see a lot of brothers uniting together and working together for the common good, and that's to preach the good news and to help each other and help the poor, help the oppressed. And just wanted to put that out at that little information there. There's also some negative stuff in terms of issues of ordination, titles. Some people prefer reverend, and some have bishop, some are pastors, some are ministers. So there's certain things that can be interpreted as too much stiff, too much, asking too much in terms of too much rules, too much policies. For instance, to become a minister, some denominations put the bar really high in terms of education. Like you have to get certain degree, certain masters, certain time, and there has to be a balance in terms of the practical. And now today we see there's a lot of things changing in terms of mentoring, coaching, different things, lay teaching up the lay person in terms of preparing them for ministry. So a lot of denominations have been changing in terms of that, but there's still some that are more stiff in terms of you have to go to such and such university and you have to take such and such courses. And so, but there's a lot of flexibility coming around. So it doesn't matter what church you're going to. The important thing is the core in terms of the doctrine, what they believe, and is it the gospel of Jesus and the gospel of Christ? And are they teaching that you have to be born again? So we'll touch into more videos about that more in detail. And those also things coming up as in training people for marketplace ministry, recognizing that every believer has an opportunity to minister, and even if you're not a full-time minister, you can still minister the word of God in the work, in the school, in your neighborhood, wherever you are. And so there's a lot of that happening also. And people understanding that you have to get out of the four walls. And understanding the calling. That's very important, because in the Bible, when you read throughout the Bible, the personalities and people that God called, each one had a different background. And not all of them were like the Apostle Paul, that had knowledge of different languages and a very strong background in terms of being taught under religious elite. In his case, it was Gamaliel, a Pharisee. So we have people like that were fishermen that spent time with Jesus. However, they didn't spend time in terms of going to a school. There, in the Old Testament, there's reference to the school of prophets. And a lot of people think that it was Elijah that started that. So there was a lot of training, and other people went to formal training and informal. The important thing is that you're called of God. That's the most important thing for a minister to understand, that you understand that God is calling you, and you understand that God is calling you for a specific ministry or specific task. Once you understand that and you have an understanding of the calling, and you're 100% sure that God is calling you, then you can start to walk out, and God's going to open doors. God's going to open a way, and you'll go to either, there's so many things. Some people get bottled up in terms of where I should go. You can either go to university, you can go to college, you can go to seminaries, you can go to institutes, whatever the name of that educational school is. God will open a way, and He'll make a way. And but the most important thing is to recognize that God is calling you. There's different types of callings. You can be called for the full-time ministry, you can be called part-time, and there's so much range. And you just read the Bible, there's so many different callings in the Bible. When called Moses, Amos was a farmer, David was a shepherd, Daniel worked in government, and so did Nehemiah, he was the cupbearer, so etc., etc. There's so many things. And a lot of times some people get boggled down in the denominational, and you must be only interacting with the people from your denomination. So it's kind of like closes the door in terms of interacting with other believers, and it really actually develops your belief system, and you can understand how people, different faith, different denominations within the Christianity came about to what they believe, instead of just reading it or hearing it secondhand, even just hearing it from your minister, the minister where you're going to church. So we get to see a lot of that. So there's a lot of difference in terms of the government, how a church is organized, and that determines a lot. It varies from different denominations. Also, the time period that a minister stays. Some denominations have a set time in terms of for 5 years or 8 years or 10 years. The ministers are in a certain congregation, and then they go to another congregation, and another minister is sent, so they rotate them. Other congregations, the minister founds the church, and they're the ones that stay there until they die or until they retire, and then they personally get another minister. So there's different types of formats. There's we'll look into the different types later, more videos. So there's the minister that sort of like takes over the whole administrative, more of a does the more aspect of it, controlling the whole system. There's the one that is run by committee. We'll look into the different types, like I said, later on. So that's kind of like, in a nutshell, what I want to get in terms of this video about denominations, and sort of get an answer to why they exist. Are they relevant? Are they from God? And what are the good things about it? What are the negative things about it? And so I know that it'll be a blessing, it'll be edifying, and it's good to know, like I said, because a lot of times you grow up in the same church, or you go to the same church and you don't interact with people from other denominations. Like, for instance, the Pentecostals will not be rarely interacting with the Baptists or the Lutheran, or will have a vague idea of what they believe in. They'll just go on the surface or just what they've been told. But it's something, there's something talking, reading something about something or hearing it from somebody, and then actually talking to that person and asking them, why do you guys celebrate your service like this? Why do you guys believe this way about this doctrine or this teaching? And then you get a better perspective, better idea why, and then if you study the history, you get more fullness in terms of understanding how the Christian religion came about to be. And it's very fascinating. And like, I guess a lot of times this is very tedious in terms of history, because to be honest with you, talking about history, looking about the dates, looking about people, sometimes can be boring, and it takes time. So, but it's very, very rewarding, because you get to see the names of these great men and women of God that he lifted up throughout the ages, and just through his Spirit just told them a certain issue. You know what? And a lot of different churches were born, different denominations, because the churches that were at that time where the person was living had forgot certain things in terms of that were foundational, or that were being neglected. like an instance, like I said about Salvation Army, William Booth came from the Methodist background. However, he thought that the Methodist Church had kind of lost a little bit of the foundation of what John Wesley in terms of helping the people. And so he saw that, you know what, there's people homeless, people on the streets, and they're not being reached. Alcoholics, people with all kinds of problems in the streets, and they really didn't feel like they could come into the church because everyone's dressed nice. Everyone's a tie, has a suit, and that's another thing. Every church that belongs to Christ, it doesn't matter if you're well dressed, but anybody should be able to come into your church and not feel intimidated. They should feel, they should have a warm welcome. They should feel that they are welcome, and because a lot of people are hurting and they need some help. They're looking to help. So a lot of times the church is the last resort. They don't know what to do. And so when anybody comes in the church, it doesn't matter what kind of clothing they should wear. Like James talks a lot about that. If somebody comes in and you play favoritism, that's actually a sin. That's what the Bible says in James. And so we have to be careful about all those things. And so it's very important to understand denominations, understand the different types of churches. And a lot of times there are little things that people blow out of proportions and go to the extremes of saying this group is teaching heresy on little things. There's stuff like soteriology dealing with salvation, eschatology dealing with the end time principles, and like Calvinists versus Arminians, and fundamental Baptists versus Southern Baptists. And there's so many things that can be really, when you think about it, they're very minor. Liturgy. Some people use hymns. Some people use contemporary music. Some sing a cappella. Some use instruments. So there's several things that are very minimal, but the foundational is what is important, the core doctrinal teachings of what they believe. And in terms of Christianity as a whole, in the main denominations agree on the main thing. So let's put Christ first, and let's enjoy these teaching videos, and I pray and hope, like I've been saying, that they will be a blessing to everybody that watches. God bless.